Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to Build Your Legacy. Let me send out this link before we get started. Today, we're going to be going over Season 2 preseason power rankings. Yeah, so we'll see where everybody lands. 1 second. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started. This will be posted to the league's YouTube channel afterwards. Anyways, we're trying to keep this between 20 and 25 minutes, so it's not super long. We're not going to go over all the conferences and all that. Obviously, we will later in the year. But as of right now, we're just going to go over our preseason rankings. Brandon, do you want to kind of explain how we came up with the rankings so that way people kind of know?
Yeah, so the way we broke down the rankings was if you were losing a lot of players, who you were bringing back, the mixture of how you ended the last season, just and stuff like that. So it's a mixture of everything. Not if you had a really good season last year, but you lost a lot of people, and you're like, oh, why am I not number two or whatever? That's probably the reason. You probably lost too much.
Yeah, so just so people know, we didn't just go off of who had the better records and just put it in order last year or conference records. We went off of when your losses came, when your wins came, how many people you lost in the offseason, the job you have in the offseason compared to your opponents and the new conferences. So it's projecting, obviously. You're at this point, we're projecting the top 32 based on last year heading into this year. So just keep that in mind, everybody. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's pull this up. So obviously BYL preseason rankings. So at 32, we have San Jose State. Obviously, tough season for the Spartans with Tyler Meyer, head coach Tyler Meyer. In the back half of the season, he was in the hospital, so he gave up a few forced losses. But I mean, he got a good recruiting class. I think he got 2 4-star quarterbacks coming into the season next year, or this year, I should say. So he'll definitely reach more than one win. He's obviously going to try to push for bowl eligibility this season. So shout out to San Jose State for sticking with us through a rougher year.
Yeah, 31, we have Coastal Carolina. Another one of those guys. I believe he got a good recruiting class coming in. I know he said that he was going to bench his quarterback. He got a new guy coming in. So, rough year for him, but hopefully he picks it up and starts moving to the right direction.
Definitely. Number 30, we have UNLV, Xavier Jones. I'm going to go out and say it. I expected a lot more out of UNLV this year. I thought he was going to be competing for the conference title. He was 0-9, I think, at one point, 0-10 at one point. So I want everyone in the Mountain West to know he will not be 0-10 this year. I can guarantee you he's not going to be that bad of a record this year. At some point, he's going to turn the UNLV team around. So I would anticipate it be this year. UNLV is a really good team. In comparison to the Mountain West, they're a top half of the schools in that conference. So be on the lookout for him. I think he's going to have the biggest jump of everybody in this power ranking. So be on the lookout for him.
At 29, we have Miami, Ohio. Shout out to Miami. He had one of the best recaps of the season. Rough year for him, but like he said, he got some guys coming in. He got some pieces that he's building off of, and he's looking to make some noise in the Sun Belt this year. He was in the CUSA, and he's got his team where he wants them to be at, and he's moving forward in the right direction.
Definitely. Moving on, we have Georgia State, 28. He is currently on a cruise right now, so he has been inactive for the last week or so. He gets back Monday. I'm not sure if he played his last couple of games because of the cruise. I know he didn't get to do anything in the offseason, so we don't really know how his team looks. So he was kind of hard to rank. I know he was 2-1 at the start of the power rankings early on, then lost like 3 or 4 straight. So had a rough tail end of the season last year. But overall, solid coach. Hopefully, he kind of bounce back after not being able to do his offseason because of being on the cruise. We did put him on autopilot, so the CPU did do it for him. So hopefully, they did a good job for him.
Yeah, 27, FIU. I'm not sure. I haven't looked at his recruiting class and stuff like that to see who he was losing or bringing back. But he got his team where he wants them to be at moving into the off season. So hopefully he picks it up and has his team leading to the right direction this season.
Number 26, we have Charlotte. This is the old James Madison user. It's Alberto. Obviously, second guessing himself on why he left. But I mean, I think it'll be a fresh a breath of fresh air. New uniforms, new location. new team, new players. So hopefully it kind of turns it around. Charlotte went 10-3 last year, I believe, or 11-3. So they're trending in the right direction with hiring a new coach. So they obviously see something in him. So shout out to Alberto for taking the Charlotte job.
Number 25, we have UTEP. This is somebody that I thought me and you both were high on last season. He didn't have the season that he wanted to. I was in the recruiting battle with him on a couple of players, so I know he got some players that I was looking to get. So I know he's got his recruits going, and I feel like he's in the trending in the right direction for sure.
Number 24, we have North Texas. This is Donovan. Obviously, another guy who held himself to a higher standard, according to his recap. Didn't have the season he would like. We have him here at 24. He's obviously going to try to compete for that conference championship. As we get into the top 20 range, I feel like everybody is kind of very bunched together, and I would say the separation between teams are very thin. So, 1 or 2 seasons could propel you, 10 spots. So, obviously, Don S is looking for a better season out of the Mean Green in North Texas. So we'll look to see what he does this year.
At number 23, Memphis. He already has a really good team. I'm assuming that his recruiting and stuff like that was pretty good. He had some close games last year. He ended up having a big win over South Florida, and he has the key wins that his program was looking for last year. And now he's just trying to build off what he left off on last year.
Definitely. 1 second. I got it. Okay. Moving on, we have 22. We have South Alabama coach Fred Porter. Another guy who talked about his roster so far and what he wants to bring in. I know he said in his recap that he's trying to get the right guys in the program. He's trying to bring some guys in that fit his scheme. I think it goes to show as well, goes to say, I can speak for him, that he thinks that he can do a lot better this season. And trending in the right direction when picking up the recruits you need is obviously a positive thing. So looking forward to see what South Alabama does in the conference this year.
At number 21, we have Hawaii. He started off last season very strong, has some good wins. I think he lost to Sterling and Fresno State, ended up getting some big wins. Ended up losing a couple of games at the end of the season. But to have Hawaii, I believe he did have a really good recruiting class in the Mountain West. So he has something that he can build from, landed some good players. And I think he attacked the portal as well pretty good. So I expect him to be like third or fourth in the Mountain West again this year.
Number 20, we have Marshall, Coach Ajimi Becton. Obviously, another guy who I feel like realistically can knock off anyone in the league. It's just a consistency thing, I feel like. There's some games where, he's coming out full throttle, battling with you all the way to the end. There's some games where he falls behind early. He's very, very adept with using that tight end. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, he had the number 1 wide receiver in college football last year. I could be wrong, but I think his name is like Tyshawn or something. So definitely look for Ajimi to have a bounce back year. I don't think his place on this list is indicative of the player he is. So definitely look out for Ajimi this season.
I'm gonna let you do this one as well. I know you know a lot more about him.
Okay, that's fine. So here we have Darius. So those of you guys who don't know, this is Darius, the new head coach at Rice. We have him at 19. A lot of people are going to ask, why is he above other people? Again, this is a preseason ranking. So this is a kind of a projection of the top 32 teams. He could very easily be in the top 10 or top 5 or however much higher. But we looked at his roster, looked at the opponents he has to play. And I think 19 is the correct spot for him. Obviously, not too low, not too high, just the right spot to kind of, build and, prove himself amongst the other 31 users in here. So number 19 for Rice.
Number 18, Utah State. He was somebody that I was really big on towards the end of the year. He surprised a lot of people early on. I think he started off 6-3 after losing a couple games, started getting some win streaks going. I believe he was in the top 30 in recruiting as well. So he's definitely got something he's building in Utah. And I expect him to carry it over to next season.
Number 17, we have Western Kentucky, Coach Zachary McDowell. No disrespect to Zachary, or I'm not going to say Zachary. That's weird. No disrespect to Zach. But Zach should have had a far better season than he had last year. I think he finished 7-6. He could have easily been a 10-win team. I think there were like 4 or 5 games where he had the game in hand and his team and coaching just folded at the last minute. I know he had Akron down to the wire late. I think he had a few CPU games down to the wire late. So obviously that comes with experience. Just putting yourself in those positions, in those situations. So he easily could have been a 10-win team this year. So hopefully he kind of turns that around. Western Kentucky is a great offense, and hopefully he can continue to have a good season next year.
At number 16, Tulsa, he was the old Central Michigan user. He took a new job. I'm not sure how big of an upgrade it was, but I know he wanted a fresh start with a different team. So, and he's a really good user and a really good coach. So I expect him to move over to Tulsa and pick them up off the ground and get them going.
Number 15, we have UTSA. Obviously, UTSA, I believe, was in the American last year, if I'm not mistaken. The American or the Conference USA, one of the two. He's the only team that moved over to the Mountain West. So all the Mountain West users are looking forward to playing him, obviously. He had a decent season last year as well. Obviously, being at 15, you're right in the middle of, the pack, if so to speak. So I'm sure he feels like he has something to prove here. I've been on record saying I thought the Mountain West was the best conference last year. So obviously, him coming in, he wants to make a statement and put his foot down and show that he can compete with, the best users, in my opinion. So we'll just have to see. But UTSA moves into the Mountain West.
Number 14, we have UAB, Chauncey. I was hoping he would be able to rock out with us last year. This is somebody that I expect to be up in the top 10 range and here in a couple of weeks. Going to UAB, I know he had a couple of guys that was wanting to transfer to him. He's probably my favorite right now for the American Conference, and I expect him to make a lot of noise.
Definitely. Another situation where a new user comes in, although we may have felt like he should be higher, he still has to kind of earn his way. So I feel like 14 was a good spot for him. He has a decent team as well. I think his team is an 81 overall.
Yeah.
Before we go on, Bryce says, I just checked. I had the second highest rating in the Big 12. Dream job right here. That's crazy if everybody else is under an 82 or whatever. That's actually crazy. Liberty at 13, we have Coach Grundy here. Obviously, nicknamed himself BCS Grundy. He got the FCS Grundy slack thrown at him all season long because of the losses. But I think he still ended up with a good season, obviously. Liberty is one of the top power or top group of 5 programs, so expectations were a little bit higher. So I think he's looking to kind of turn the ship around, so to speak, and try to make a push for a playoff spot. So we'll see.
At number 12, we have myself, Texas State. As everybody knows, I lost every starter on defense. I lost 8 starters on offense. I lost a lot of players. But I ended up signing 30 players in the offseason. Didn't end the season how I wanted to. I'm in the process of moving, so I took 2 forced losses. And I expect to bounce back year 2 strong and try to win that Sun Belt.
Yeah, so I'm going to speak on it a little bit as well, just because obviously you're speaking about yourself, so it's kind of weird. So The reason why we have Brandon at 12, he obviously lost a lot, but I think you finished with a 9-4 record. You started off 1-2, and then the other 2 losses came, and you didn't play the games. You had to give a forced loss because you're moving. So he won 8 games straight and then lost the last 2 because he didn't play. So it's kind of hard to penalize him for that. But it's also hard to reward him, and that's why he's outside of the top 10. He beat Arkansas State, who was the number 1 team at one point in the polls last year for BYL. So had to give him credit for that. So we'll just have to see. So Texas State at 12. Number 11, we have Colorado. This is our first Power 5 team. Nico, former Arkansas State coach, who we just talked about. The reason why we have him at 11, though, and not any higher, I don't think Nico is outside of the top 10 as far as user skill goes in this league. But I think Colorado has lost way too much. I compare them to the Florida State team in real life. They've lost 4 of their wide receivers. They lost a quarterback, their running back. They lost starting DBs. They lost starting linebackers and defensive linemen. I think he's like a 79 or 80 overall now. And that's lower than a lot of teams that we have in the group of 5. And he's going to have to play against better opponents. So I think 11, this is the preseason projection for him. I know he plays UAB, who we have a few spots behind him in week 1. I believe he plays San Diego State, who we haven't talked about just yet as well. So he definitely has his work cut out for him. But that's where we have Colorado at number 11. I'm sorry.
At number 10, we have Toledo, who started the season off really good, and he ended up losing, I think, his last 4 out of 5 games starting in November. But he tacked the recruiting trail very heavy. I think he's in the top 25 or so, top 30 in recruiting. So he was able to get the recruits to bring in stack on top of what he was already building. He's coming over to the Sun Belt. I know he fell short in the CUSA championship last year, and he wants to try to come to the Sun Belt and take over. So I'm excited to see what he does.
At number 9, we have SDSU. We just talked about him, obviously, with the big-time matchup against. He even plays Colorado or West Virginia, one of the two. He might play both, but he has two Power Five matchups, I believe. Obviously, lost the Mountain West Championship last year, but he had a really good season. I think he finished 10-3, if I'm not mistaken, or no, 9-4 maybe. So not the way he wanted to finish. I think he was 6-0 or 7-0 at one point. So I feel like 9 is a good spot for him. If I'm not mistaken, he's the third highest Mountain West team on this list. So at 9 is where we have Commissioner Sterling, head coach at SDSU.
At number 8, we have Akron. This is somebody who won the CUSA last year. He started off the season very strong. He was the number 1 in the polls for a couple of weeks, and he ended up losing a couple of games on the backstretch. And I think he had a pretty bad recruiting class, but I think he ended up picking it back up towards the end in the transfer portal. And I expect him to come to the Sun Belt and make a lot of noise as well. He won the CUSA and he's a conference champion, so we got to put some respect on him in the Sun Belt for sure.
Definitely. Number 7, we have Mizzou. So this is our second of 3 Power 5 teams that got picked up, or coaches that got picked up. This is Coach Westside moving over from Middle Tennessee State. I felt like last year, Brandon and I, Sterling as well, when he took part in the power rankings, definitely, I'm not going to say didn't respect him, but he flew under the radar. He had a couple of big wins last year, especially later in the season, but he had a couple of bad losses as well. But I think with Mizzou and the team they're building, the fact that he's the only team in the SEC, so he really controls his own destiny to get to the playoffs and win his conference, I think this is a really good team. The fact that you're at a team like Mizzou where you could stay there for realistically the rest of the dynasty and build, from the ground up there. They're not in Alabama or Georgia. They're kind of middle of the road there, but it'll be a really fun team to use. So I like him at number 7 here heading into the season.
At number 6, we have our last and final group of Power 4 team, West Virginia, Coach Bryce here. I think the reason he's not in the top 5, I think he's the top 5 with the team that he has, but I believe they lost a couple of pieces on offense and defense. I know it's a huge break losing your quarterback, but I expect him to get his position groups filled out and ready to go by week 1 when he plays Fresno State, and I think he plays SDSU week 2, so he has a lot of figuring out to do that from there. But he only plays 3 users, and I favor him to win the Big 12. He just needs to figure out his roster early on.
And he does play Colorado in the regular season. So him and
Yes.
Colorado do play. So that should be a good matchup of 2 Power 5 teams. Should be College game day. Number 5, in the top 5, here we go. We have Tulane, another commissioner, Coach Trey Danforth. You guys saw his recap today. Definitely surprised me last season. Tulane, obviously, one of the better group of 5 teams. I think he missed out on the conference championship with the whole sim ordeal thing we had to do for him against the Temple CPU. So really missed out on a good opportunity, but top 5 heading into the season, definitely deserves his flowers. Let's see if he can continue the success and continue the Tulane Green Wave showing here in the top 5.
At number 4, we have South Florida. He won the American Conference last year, and I believe he's bringing back his quarterback and his wide receiver, I believe. He had a couple of transfers come in, a couple of recruits coming in, so I expect him to pick up where he left off at last year and kind of go back and try to run it back for a second time in a row.
I'm going to have you do number 3 as well.
Number 3, we have App State, Sun Belt champions here. He brought back a lot of pieces on his team, and I believe he got in like a 3 or a 4-star quarterback who's like a 97 speed. So I expect him to be a problem next year with that quarterback. And Sun Belt champions, I think he's going to try to run it back for a year or 2, and I expect him to be a problem in the Sun Belt this year, returning all those pieces.
Definitely. So the reason why I wanted to skip that, I wanted you to go 3. I want to talk about Fresno State because a lot of people are probably going to look at this pick and think that he's too high. And when me and you did these rankings, I actually said I wanted him at 2. So he obviously didn't make the conference championship. He had 3 losses on the season. So people are going to look at that like, why is he here? I think Fresno State is arguably the best team out of everyone that we have coming back in the group of 5. Not only that, but all 3 of his losses, one was to number 1 Oregon at the time, and he lost by the game-winning field goal on the 5-yard line. He chip shot and missed it. Then he lost to myself and San Diego State. Both of those losses came, I think, in the first 3 to 4 weeks of the season last year. He ran the table the rest of the year, beat everybody that was put in front of him, including the bowl game. The only game he lost to was the Oregon loss. Obviously lost to them with the game-winning field goal, like I said. So I felt as though Fresno State deserved to be here. Again, the top 5 is very interchangeable, but this was with my vote. Brandon didn't really push back on it because, like I said, they're very interchangeable. And I feel like Fresno State is one of the best teams coming back next year. I think he's an 85. He's either an 85 or an 84 overall coming back this year, which is higher than all of the damn Power 5 teams that got accepted. So he would be the highest ranked team in the Big 12 right now, if I'm not mistaken, or number 1 or number 2. So the fact he has his team coming back, and he's, in his last 11 games, he's 10-1. So got to put some respect there. But y'all know who number 1 is, man.
Yeah, number 1.
Y'all know who doing, man.
Returning champions from the Mountain West, and he won the national championship. Is only right. Number 1. He brought back his starting quarterback. Brought back some pieces on his defense. I know his offensive line is stout. His offensive line is a problem. So he don't have the best team returning, but you got to put some respect on his name. He ran the table 16-0, national championships. He has a target on his back, especially a target in the Sun Belt with number 2 Fresno State. I think Sterling's also in the top 10, so they want some Boise, and they're gonna try and knock him off. So I'm excited to see what he does year 2.
Definitely, we're gonna put out we're probably gonna go through week 4 and then put out the next set of rankings. So I mean that'll probably be in the next week, realistically. Excuse me, because we normally fly through the first couple of weeks pretty fast. So thank you guys so much for checking us out, checking with the rankings. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. Make sure you like the video. Thank you guys so much. We will see you guys on the next rankings, and we'll see you guys in the Discord. Peace out, everybody.
Sir, peace.